It was a random night in 2022, and I was only in the middle of my summer vacation. I was staying up late and trying to find something to watch on YouTube, and that's when I found a gaming video from the YouTuber Cub Scouts who was playing a game called Danganronpa Trigger Happy Havoc. Now I remember finding the gameplay and characters amazing and different, as this was the first visual novel I had truly encountered. I fell asleep after the first video and remember waking up sick, and it will always be an amazing memory for me watching through a ton of the playthrough with my sister, who was also sick at the time. Now, skipping a few weeks later, me and her had started watching the gameplay for Danganronpa 2 Goodbye Despair, and this game completely blew me away. Not in the way Trigger Happy Havoc had, and not in the way that Killing Harmony would do in the future. This game had a massive impact on me due to one character standing out among the rest, and that character would be Hajime Hinata, or as I like to call him in most of my videos, the False Ultimate. Hajime Hinata is the protagonist of Danganronpa Goodbye Despair, and in my opinion is one of the best written characters in the franchise. The reason I think this is because Hajime seems more human than the other protagonists. Now, I'm not saying that the other two don't feel human or relatable, as Makoto's optimism and blandness works well considering he is supposed to be the main source of hope for the world, and Kaede's themes towards wanting to save everyone without having to resort to killing is done fantastically. But in my eyes, Hajime's character arc focuses on something deeper and more psychological, that being the act of self-acceptance. So to commemorate my first video essay style video, I thought, why not take the time to grade his character along with a nice and relaxing soundtrack playing. This video will be going over his grading for introduction, complexity, depth of thought, parallels, monologues, dialogues, nuance, and catharsis. While the second video will mainly be about Hajime's effect on me, so I'll cover categories like symbolism, themes, and I might go a bit heavier with personal impact. And we will be using his character moments from Danganronpa 3, the anime, both the Future and Despair arc, along with the moments from Danganronpa 2 Goodbye Despair. So I would highly recommend you watch those before watching this video, but obviously you can do whatever you want. And with all that out the way, let's begin. Also, if you're wondering why I'm not doing the typical type of character analysis for Hajime, it's mainly because I've seen one, and I feel like if I try to do my own, I just end up copying it. Definitely recommend you check out Mushka's video for an awesome Hajime analysis, but after watching this one, please. Anyways, back to the video. Now look, I'm gonna have to cut this part kinda short and just give you guys the cold hard truth. Hajime does not have that good of an introduction. Now, it's not garbage, as his introduction is capable of showing that he has way more personality than Makoto, though isn't immediately open and overly optimistic like the leading Kaede. But other than this, we don't get much for his introduction that stands out. Though this may be a hot take since apparently a lot of people didn't like the Danganronpa 3 anime, I do think it does favors for him. This because through his first interaction with Chiaki, we're able to understand more of his view of the world and how he sees himself. Now, we are also told that Hajime is a reserve corps student. Now, this was an edition of Hope's Peak where anyone who was willing to pay a hefty price and pass an entrance exam could enter. Though this was revealed later on that it was mainly just a ploy for administrators to not only fund the Kamakura project, but also find test subjects amongst these students. And it's also through flashbacks, both within the visual novel and the anime, that we get to see people chastising Hajime's parents for sending him to Hope's Peak in the first place, and that he does have a past of being looked down upon, which could aid his own self-deprecating nature that he embodies throughout the anime. And it's also the conversation that allows the pieces to his eventual hesitation to be set in place. Overall, I'd give his introduction a solid B+. His introduction was kind of basic, but the anime gave us a pretty good overview of his character, so it's nowhere near bad. Alright then, let's talk about his complexity. Honestly, I'd confidently say this is one of his strong points. Hajime's character in the anime is one built upon self-doubt. This is due to him believing he was worthless and had nothing to be proud of himself for. And can you truly even blame him? Before Chiaki, there wasn't a single person who reached out to him. All he could experience was the torment of not being good enough, the torment that if he weren't an ultimate, he was nothing. Interesting enough, I've seen people shove him into being a one-dimensional character, mainly due to the anime where people think he only did the Kamakura project because he wanted to be an equal with Chiaki. Anyways, while Chiaki was one of the factors of him doing it, she was not the biggest one. And as stated before, through Hajime's flashbacks and inner monologues, we're able to see that he's always idolized what Hope's Peak has stood for and how it tore him up inside to not be able to live up to such standards. Not to mention, all this would fully come together before and after the murder of Natsuyu Kuzuryu. These multiple different situations leading him to the events where he'd belittle himself even further and turn to the Izuru Kamakura project as a form of escapism as a way to truly become what he felt and was told at the time was the ideal. This is why I gave his complexity a solid A+. Now, funny thing about depth of thought is, I don't know how to really explain this part without repeating the points from complexity or making points now that are just going to be repeated later on. But I'll be sure to try. Anyways, Hajime is far from a shallow character. To explain this, I'm going to mainly focus on the incidents that the despair arc in the anime goes over, that being the murder of Natsuyu Kuzuryu. Now, the first part of this incident takes place after the events of Hajime gaining confidence from hearing Chiaki's philosophy on not needing a talent. When Natsume is crying to herself about not being an ultimate, he tries to convince her that she does not need that ultimate talent to become special, though she refuses as her ambition to stay beside Fuyuhiko as the ultimate little sister was beyond reversing, making this the first time Hajime's attempt to utilize his newly found resolve failed as Natsume was later murdered. The next part of this incident that aided in breaking his new resolve was when he tried to get answers by asking Mahiru if she knew anything about the murder. Before he could even step foot on the main campus, he is immediately stalked by Sakakura, the ultimate boxer. During their conversation, Sakakura downplays Natsume's murder as she was only just another reserve corps student. And while it was cool to see Hajime get so angry over it and rush Sakakura, bro's the ultimate boxer, so obviously it didn't do that much. Sakakura would then dig into Hajime's new philosophy of people being born equal, stating how normal people are meant to just fall behind the ultimates as nothing should bring them more happiness than that. He would even go as far as to state that reserve corps students are replaceable, and how Hajime should simply remain in the background. Now, I know Sakakura didn't completely mean any of this, it was practically making sure Hajime wouldn't dig his nose into dangerous business, but you have to admit he was a little harsh with the delivery, as this conflict would cause Hajime to cave in and go through the Kamakura project, wanting to be everyone's hope and not continue to be someone who just gets shoved off and called replaceable. It was only after he failed such big moments that he caved and realized continuing down this route was completely pointless. I'm going to leave it here for now because I plan on going more in depth on my thoughts for Trial 6 and later in the grading. So with all that being out the way, I think it's valid to give Hajime an S for depth of thought. Now, the reason I hold his parallels in such high regard is due to how we can see the development within his ideology and truly see how both him and Nagito specifically are two sides of the same coin. This because while they both idolize things like the theme of hope, Hope's Peak Academy, and Ultimates, Hajime's whole mission throughout his character arc is to show that you can be special without some sort of ultimate talent. This totally parallels Nagito's ideology of people with talents and those without. Within a monologue from Nagito, we learn how he believes that those who aren't born with a talent can't climb to the level of ultimates, and how no matter what they do, they will always be considered unworthy. He even immediately begins to belittle Hajime and try to slowly break him down after learning he was a reserve corps student. It's this way of thinking that allows Hajime to have greater parallels towards the end of his character arc. This because in the end, they both end up accomplishing their goals, and it's through this that they're able to truly stand together as equals. Nagito sacrifices himself in the name of hope, which aids in his philosophy of being a stepping stone for true hope. And Hajime is able to push past those events that happen in Trial 5 and in the future Trial 6 and truly learn to come into himself and embrace his current circumstances as both Izuru and Hajime, which is shown through the 2.5 episode and the Hope arc. And in the end, it's the way that Hajime's ideology about ultimates and talentless people being equal at the end of the day correctly parallels the natural world order that was formed within their twisted society and strung along by Hope's Peak that truly embodies how well he parallels the entire story. And that's why I feel it's only right to give him an A+ rating for this category. Alright, so when I was thinking about monologues to put into the video, the first one that came to my mind was his conversation with AI Chiaki inside of his mind. This inner monologue gave Hajime the ability to fully put his feelings out into the open and say exactly what was worrying him about the decision. He was able to admit how much of the burden and pressure of the choices were weighing on him, whether it was sacrificing himself and becoming Izuru again, or saving himself and letting the world fall back into despair. It's through this inner monologue that Hajime is given the resolve to have more self-confidence within himself. Chiaki tells him how having a talent shouldn't be the goal, but how it's through learning to believe in yourself that you're able to move forward. This inner monologue with Chiaki is how Hajime's philosophy of reaching for the future fully locks in. He's able to fully understand that what he experienced in the past and the different themes society tried to place upon him were wrong, and that the only way to fix it was through creating a future beyond those ideologies and putting faith within the faith that you create. And that's exactly why I believe he gets an A+ on Monologues. Hajime has great lines of dialogue throughout the game, but I feel like it wouldn't be a Hajime Hinata video if I didn't focus mainly on his highest peaks in the game and the anime. That being Trial 6, bet you guys are way too tired of Trial 6, and his confrontation with Mitsurai. I'll start off with his rebuttal to Junko's despair during Trial 6. After his inner monologue with Chiaki, Hajime is finally ready to show his newfound conviction to everyone and convince them to choose the future. Hajime's dialogue when he awakens honestly is some of the most inspiring dialogue you could listen to if you're struggling with your decisions from the past and experiencing doubt about the upcoming future. It's also when he finally says lines like "I am not Izuru Kamakura, I am Hajime Hinata." This line of dialogue for Hajime perfectly encapsulates his character arc throughout the game and the despair arc. This is him fully coming into himself and who he is now, and him truly accepting that he shouldn't allow anyone else to decide his future. Not Hope's Peak, not the Future Foundation, not Junko, not the world's view of hope, not the world's view of despair, not anyone or anything but himself. And along with that, he stays realistic and logical. Hajime admits that he doesn't know what the future will hold for them, or how things will turn out, but he doesn't let that scare him anymore, as he admits whatever does happen will be their decision and no one else's. Hajime is also able to inspire the rest of the survivors to trust in the future and go back to the real world believing everything will be alright. His choice of words saved them, and in the future, Mitsurai. Mitsurai is someone who clings to the past, kind of like Hajime in the beginning of his character arc. He rightfully blames himself for Junko's rise in power since he taught her how to make the despair video, and in an attempt to fix it, he tries to wipe the concept of despair from the world. Hajime, with some help from his classmates, is able to talk Mitsurai off this ledge. He is able to make Mitsurai see the holes in his plan, explain how you can't pretend the past never happened and erase it, and how even if you don't have the right to seek forgiveness from the world, the least you can do is atone. Work to improve yourself in your future. And funny thing about this is you don't even have to search through his highest peaks to find good dialogues for Hajime. Whether it's through his free times with people like Chiaki, Ryuhiko, or my new top 5 member, Mahiru, you can find a good portion of his dialogues and have a natural feel to them, and his interactions with the others. Hajime's ability to inspire others through feelings of relatability as sort of a middleman through all his distress is the reason I believe he deserves an S for dialogue. Nuance is defined as expressing a core set of ideals and character traits in various ways, sometimes by contradicting the original impression. Why am I saying this? It's honestly because, in my eyes, this is the hardest category to explain, personally for me. Anyways, Hajime's nuance comes through how he thinks of himself within the visual novel. During chapters 1 through 3, Hajime had confidence, and he was sure of himself because he assumed he just forgot his talent but was still an ultimate at the end of the day. Because him forgetting his talent was the way he saw himself as being equal with everyone else. But in chapter 4, when Nagito outs him for being a reserve corps student, that cracks his mental state, and we can see the seeds of his self-doubt beginning to form. Even after he told everyone he didn't have a talent in chapter 5, and they didn't mind it, he goes along with the happy notion of them still being equals. But based off his attitude in chapter 6, it's obvious it still bothered him. Hajime would talk about how he shouldn't have to bear the burden of making the final decision because he doesn't even have a talent. The whole way of thinking allows you to infer that even after the support from people like Chiaki and Yukizome during the anime, and the survivors from the visual novel, Hajime didn't see himself as an equal to any of them until the ending of chapter 6. And that's why I believe his Nuance should get a grading of A+. Now, when I think about grading Hajime's character for Catharsis, the scenes that I think about most would be his spiraling in the funhouse in chapter 4, and his total breakdown during Trial 6. Really sorry I keep bringing up Trial 6, but that is one of his biggest peaks, so I'm gonna keep doing it. Now during chapter 4, our cast of characters is trapped within a funhouse without food or water, and their only way to get out is by one of them committing a murder. Now Hajime is one of the first people to speak out about his view on the situation, claiming how he'd rather die of hunger than have anyone else get killed. Though after a few days of extreme starvation and dehydration, he begins to stumble. He tries to go into the final dead room, assuming that through that challenge is a way to hope. And it's only when he's talked down by Chiaki that he's finally able to take a breath and figure out the logical way of handling things. Now, when Hajime learns that he's Izuru Kamakura, you can already see the seeds of doubt within him beginning to rise through his voice. He loses the small amount of composure and his mental state begins to crack. That the thought of him disappearing scares him, and it's shown when Makoto tries to reason with him. His screaming when he had a memory of being Izuru, the way his voice actor conveys his pain when he tells everyone he can't decide, and the facial expressions given him to portray these themes of terror are even better. Not to mention, this moment can be paralleled with when he chooses the future. The emotion behind his voice during his awakening adds towards his newly found conviction. So with all this in mind, I feel like it makes sense to give his Catharsis an S. Alright, and that's it for now. Sorry this took so long. I promised it back in January. Now it's March, because this was originally supposed to be a special video for Hajime's birthday, and I'm 2 months late. Sorry, Hajime. Anyways, I did want to explain why I said in my intro that this was gonna be me figuring out my future on YouTube. It's because I would really love for my channel to become more of a character analysis one. I'd still do edits on the side, but this is what I really would like to do. So if this video does well, who knows, maybe I'll keep doing them. Maybe this video will crash and burn and I won't do any of them again. Anyways, I am gonna make a part 2 for this video. Even if this one does bad, that one is getting made because I've already spent time towards it. And I really do enjoy doing this. Anyways, that's all for me. If you liked it, thank you. If you aren't even at this part, thank you for at least clicking on the video. Anyways, that's all from me. See ya.